Bonjour everyone, Pantoufleee here today for a new video in which we are going to talk a little bit about the KUNZE event and especially what are the best tanks for you to be able to maximize the number of damage you can do in order to get it completely for free, because as you may or may not know, the KUNZE event is free to play as long as you do those big ass damage, because you need in average for 10 days every 10 battles 2.4k damage at least. It's 2,450 if I'm not mistaken, but let's run it up to 2.5k, so at least we are sure that we will get it completely for free. So today I'm going to propose you my top 5, so let's not lose too much time and jump directly into it. The first tank, or I should say tanks, that I want to talk about first are the AMX50B and the T57 Heavy, both of them because they feature the auto-loading mechanism. The cool thing about those is that if, for example here with the Grill 15, you manage to get someone that you can clip with HE, you are already gonna do half or maybe even more than half the damage needed. For example, in that Grill 15 we did 1.6k damage. And yes, you just have to roll back to a safe place, you wait for your whole reload and you sneak another full clip like that, and that's done. You have yourself your 2.4k damage needed for you to get your new KUNZE. Just be careful if you want to do that, because those tanks are not necessarily the best when it comes to bouncing shots. Therefore, try to stick with the rest of your team and hopefully you will be able to not get destroyed too fast in order for you to at least clip to burst into your opponents. I want to also remind you that the reload time is only 20 seconds, so if at the beginning of the game you manage to burst 3 shells on your opponents without bouncing them, of course, after you crawl back to a safe position for 20 seconds and you roll again on the battlefield, you are possibly making sure that the KUNZE will be yours. Sticking to autoloaders, I would like to introduce you to the Foch 155. This tank is emblematic when it comes to dealing damage because it has one of the highest DPM at tier 10, but on top of that it also features an incredible armor profile, which means that this tank is kind of perfect for newbies, simply because you will be able to bounce shots and not necessarily get punished for every single mistake you make, and you're gonna see that through the replay right now. But what's impressive also is that yes, it's a tank destroyer at tier 10 and it also features an auto-loading mechanism, which makes it one of the deadliest when it comes to bursting damage, because with this tank, if I'm not mistaken, you can burst around 1.1k damage every 21 seconds if we take into consideration the whole reload plus the 7.5 seconds of reload between shots. Otherwise, if we don't take it into consideration, that in 7.5 seconds you will be able to do 1.1k damage. So it's the perfect tank. On top of that, with all the bounce you saw right on my tank, as you can see, we bounced a couple of shells right there, and it makes it a really newbie friendly tank for you to be able to get your KUNZE. And another tank we need to talk about during this video is the T62A. I could have talked about the T22 medium, that is the collector version of the T62A, but I decided not to because I wanted to keep it either with tanks that you can get right now or tanks that are from the tech tree. So when it comes to the T62A, what I love about this tank is how versatile this is. What I mean by that is that with this you can literally do anything on the battlefield, because you have an amazing turret armor that will allow you to hold down and therefore play aggressively and deal damage. On top of that, you have one of the highest DPM for a medium tank at tier 10. You also feature a great accuracy that will make every single shot count. And on top of that, the mobility that is really good and will allow you to relocate if needed. Of course, out of all the tanks I'm going to talk about in this list, this is possibly one of the hardest to master because it's still a medium tank and mediums are not meant for every single player out there. But if you are used to Russian mediums and if you have some map knowledge about where to go to unleash your turret, this tank is definitely a go for when it comes to dealing damage, but also unlocking your KUNZE. Just make sure to hide the rest of your hull, otherwise you're gonna get completely crushed, because that's where the weak spot of the T62A is located. But yeah, honestly, when it comes to versatility, this is possibly the best tank ever, and therefore a really good contester for you to get the KUNZE. Of course, when it comes to dealing damage, I couldn't have done that top without including the FV1A3. I'm not a big fan of the tank, but for this challenge, I feel like it's a really good contester. Let me explain to you why. You have 1.3k average damage when you are using Hesh Shell. All you have to do is taking a position from which you can sneak 2 Hesh Shells, and that's it. Your challenge is complete. For example, here we did 1.3k damage on that 704 at the beginning of the game within the first minute. Now we're just hiding. There is the E100 already, and we clapped him a second time. Boom, that's it. 2.3k damage. We are nearly done with our challenge. So yeah, the AV183 is not the best tank overall when it comes to its accuracy, and this is what is, in my opinion, really problematic about the tank. But if you manage to get yourself in close combat with the rest of your team like I'm doing right now, you are going to decrease your chances of missing your opponents, and therefore you are going to make it quite interesting for you to deal some Hesh damage. And I also want to remind you that the closer you are to your opponents with Hesh Shells, the easier it becomes for you to penetrate them. And yes, if you are using the AV183, you definitely need to play it with Hesh Shells. Otherwise, with AP, you are probably going to do maybe 1.8k damage, like 2 shots, and that's it, you are going to die. So if your average damage or your average shots per game with this tank is only 2, I would definitely recommend playing with Hesh only. But you're gonna see it's a really interesting thing to do with that tank, and hopefully you will give it a try, because this is one masterpiece. Finally, I'm finishing that list with a premium tank that is in the shop right now, the Chisel MK6. If you don't have already that tank, and if you have enough money to buy it, I would definitely consider buying it, because this is a freaking amazing tank. But yeah, this tank is in the top for the exact same reasons as the T62A. It has everything. The TPM is insane, the accuracy is insane, the shell velocity is insane, your armor is really good, not insane, but really good, especially on the turret. And on top of that, when you are using HE shells with this one, you have around 100 millimeters of penetration, which implies that when you see the side of mediums like T62A, Object 140, STB, all those kind of tanks, you will not deal 400 but 500 alpha damage. And yeah, dealing 500 damage every time you shoot with HE, guys, is something that will grant you 2.4k damage for the KUNZE quite easily. So that's it. This is my top, and as you can see, we talked only about tier 10s. That's logic. Those are the tanks that have the highest damage per game. It's totally logic, because that's the end tiers. So I had to do a list featuring only those tier 10s. If you do not acquire yet those tier 10s and you still want to know what tanks are good for you, try Progetto 46. All the premium, the broken premium at tier 8 will probably allow you to do it, but you will need a lot of skill, because doing 2.4k damage at tier 10 is not the same as doing 2.4k damage at tier 8. So hopefully every single one of you guys will be able to acquire the KUNZE, and even if you know you will not deal 2.4k damage in average, but you still want the tank, try to grind, because the more you grind those average damage per game, the easier it becomes for you to buy the KUNZE after, because you will get a huge discount on it. So in the end, it's always worth it. If you enjoyed and if you agree with me, feel free to subscribe, like, and share. And if you think I missed a tank that was important to talk about in this video, maybe the AV405, that can be a good contester as well, feel free to tell me in the comments, and I will see you soon for a new one. See ya.